Hey folks, it's Mr. O'Keefe. This is part 2 of our video on the Age of Discovery / Apocalypse. If you missed part 1, I'll put a link in the description and you can go back to that, but this should be the second video from Unit 4. So we're going to start off, as we usually do, with a warm-up question. So this one reads, a scientific breakthrough allows you very fast travel through space. You've been selected to be one of the first people to travel to another planet. So there are a lot of risks, but a lot of rewards. Would you go? Would you do that? Let's say the government just said, hey, we'll pick some random people to go to this new planet. They pick you. You don't have to go, but you know that you'd be pretty famous if you went. You'd probably make a lot of money. You could do promotions and commercials and all that kind of stuff. So would you go? I mean, there's sure a lot of reward, but there's a lot of danger. Who knows what's going to be on that planet? It's going to be a rough journey there. I'm sure you'd be pretty nervous, kind of blasting off or taking off or however they do it. And it would be kind of scary, but is it worth the risk? And this is something we kind of have to ask ourselves all the time, right? We take risks. Hopefully you take some risks in your life, and usually the bigger risk you take, the bigger the reward is. Hopefully, if not, then you're probably doing something wrong. But today we're going to talk about some explorers, and obviously what they did was taking a big risk, but here we are 600 years later talking about them, so it worked out for a lot of them. Now, there were tons of explorers. Didn't work out for all of them. We don't talk about all of them. We're going to talk about a lot of them. We're really just going to touch on 3 of the main explorers who really impacted us the most. Now, here's a picture of, well, it's not really a picture. Well, it's a picture of a carving by about Magellan. Magellan's passing the Straits. So Ferdinand Magellan was a Spanish explorer, and he was credited with being the first to circumnavigate the globe. That means go all the way around. Now, he didn't do it himself because he was killed in the Philippines by Filipinos who didn't really take kindly to him coming in and trying to trade and all that. So he didn't make it, unfortunately, but his crew did. So he was the first to actually go around the world. And the really big deal of this is he went between the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean. He found the passageway between those two. And that was at the, well, today it's called the Strait of Magellan because, you know, it's named after him. It's all the way the very southern tip of Africa. Now, if you were an average European person, you probably didn't even really leave your community, let alone explore the world, and you saw this, you would think these guys are crazy that they go and they fly or they sail with flying naked people and lizards and arrow-eating dudes, and these guys frolicking kind of in the water, and mermaids. I don't know. There's a guy in the clouds. It looks pretty intimidating, and why would you not believe that all that stuff existed? How would you know? So this kind of stuff would kind of prop up the hero here, Magellan, or people like him, and it would also maybe discourage other folks from going on the journey because, again, would you really want to sail with a flying naked guy who's really an angel here, but still he's like, put some pants on, I guess, would be a little bit like, thanks for your help, but come on, kind of thing. So kind of going back to the warm-up, I mean, you could come back from this planet and tell people really anything you wanted to, and there's no way they would be able to disprove you unless there was other people at the planet that told you all that stuff was made up. But this is where we get a lot of, you know, folklore, right? From mermaids to giant squids to all that kind of stuff. That's all from I guess, this time period. All right, so remember, Age of Discovery / Age of Apocalypse. For Europeans, discovery. We just talked about discovery, the Strait of Magellan, passageway from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. But of course, that's through our European lens. If we use the lens of the native people or the Africans, or really, like we'll see today, anybody who is not European, things don't really work out as well for them. So the first thing we're going to learn today are the 3 G's, the 3 motivations for exploration. Why go? Now, if you think back to the warm-up, I think one reason Well, maybe not a reason for you, but maybe a reason for some people is you could spread your religion. And that was really big for Europeans at this time. Think back to the Crusades and the Inquisition. We know, hopefully, that religion is a really big deal to these people. Whether you are Protestant or Catholic, you're still very devoutly, most likely, Protestant or Catholic. And most of the people who explore, most of the countries that fund these exploration journeys are Catholic. And really one of the reasons for is they're actually still having these crusades. They need crusaders. They also lost a lot of followers, so they need to gain more followers. And these native populations are kind of ripe for the picking to them. And they just want to really spread their religion because they think it's the right thing. It's the true religion to them. Christians believe that you can't go to heaven unless you are a Christian. So they think it's important to convert people to Christianity. They sure did back then. So these people are called missionaries. Still people today, if people tell you that I went on a mission trip, they probably went to an area to spread the word of God or to do good deeds in his name or something like that. So that was one reason people wanted to go explore. Is if you live in Europe, everyone's Christian. You can't really convert other people to Christianity. And of course, you would gain favor with God if you were able to do that. And people still want to go to heaven just like they do today. Next reason, going back to the warm-up, this would probably be people's main motivation, money. I said gold because it's the 3 G's, not the 2 G's and an M. But gold was literally part of it. They found gold in South America, and they also found silver. So how did they make money besides just literally taking gold and silver out of the earth? Another big source of income was spices. Kind of seems random to you, right? Probably have a spice cabinet in your house. You got your paprika and your cumin. I think that's how you say it. And your other stuff. Obviously, I'm not the cook in the house. Pepper. There we go. That's a spice. That's really profitable. And one of those things that we take for granted in life, spices. Imagine taking a chicken breast and you just fry it in a pan and you eat it without any spices. It would be that good. It'd be pretty gross, pretty bland. So once you get spices, you kind of have to, keep having spices on your food or else it's not going to taste very good. Where do spices come from? Most of them from India, the Indies, China. Now, you could take the Silk Road to China, but that's dangerous. It takes a long time. Sailing there is going to be a lot faster. And there's really only so much you can carry on a camel, but on a ship, that's pretty big, right? You can put a lot of goods on that ship. And the faster you get to your destination, the more money you can make. And then the last reason, and maybe this was a motivation if you said yes, or maybe if you said no, you said it wasn't really worth it. Glory, being famous. Lots of people want to be famous. Maybe you want to be famous. Well, what are you going to be famous for? Hopefully you're famous and not infamous. If you probably have played this if you've ever been in the pool and ever been a kid, you played Marco Polo. Maybe you thought that was a pool game. Well, I guess it is. But it's also named after a famous explorer who was named Marco Polo. And he wrote a book about his journeys in the Orient, or basically China. And people love to read that book because it was, imagine if someone went to a different planet and they wrote about aliens. Like, wouldn't you read that? Maybe you wouldn't read the book because y'all don't like to read books. But if they made a video about it, you'd watch that. Like, you want to see a video of aliens? I would want to see a video of aliens. Who wouldn't want to see that? So they didn't have movies back then. They didn't have videos. They had books, and that's how people were entertained. So Marco Polo wrote about all of his experiences in China, and it was a wildly popular book. Now, he made some stuff up, but whatever. He took some liberties there. But people looked up to him, right? I want to be like that guy. And so he inspired other people. We talked about inspiration, if you're in my class, and probably other teachers too, with the Renaissance. People were inspired by others, and that's kind of what fueled the innovation of the Renaissance. Books like Marco Polo's books are going to fuel the desire to go exploring, even though it is dangerous. Not just other people who might not like you and might not agree with you, like we talked about with Magellan, but the ocean and navigating through that. I don't know if you've ever been out I did this once in my life. I went out on a fishing charter, and you go way out and you look around, turn around 360 degrees, and there's no land. And you're hoping the people on the charter know what they're doing, because that's kind of a scary feeling. So imagine that, but people are going to somewhere that they don't really exactly know where it is, but they think they can find it. Kind of scary. But again, with high risk should come high reward. So God and golden glory are our three motivations there. Next, we're going to watch a video. So if you want to stop this video and go down to the video description and click on the link next to video 1, I have some questions for you. So open that in another tab, then come back. Hey, hopefully you enjoyed that video. Hopefully you watched the whole thing. It should pick up 4 minutes, but it's too late now, isn't it? Well, if you have some extra knowledge, that's okay. So he touched on two main explorers, Vasco da Gama and Columbus, which we're going to talk about right now. So Vasco da Gama, what did he do? Established a trade route from Portugal to India, around the southern tip of Africa. We're going to get into more detail about him. So what? Why is it important? You're going to get a lot of additional goods coming into Europe from that area, and that's going to inspire people more. It's kind of like the Crusades, when people started bringing goods back from the Middle East. That inspired more trade. There's a demand for different goods, and more people actually want to trade. Same kind of thing is going to happen here. Columbus, we've heard of him. Probably not Da Gama, but definitely I hope you've heard of Christopher Columbus. What did he do? If you're thinking he found America, no, he didn't find it. He sailed there, and he began European colonization. That is what Columbus did do. He was not the first European to go to the Americas. Saying he discovered America is like me saying I discovered a restaurant that's been there for a long time. I just found out about it. It's not the same thing as discovering it. Columbus was Italian, but he sailed for the Spanish crown, and that affected Spain at first pretty well because they became wealthy, but then we'll see later on that they didn't really know how to handle it, and things kind of devolved from there. So who had a larger impact on history? You're probably thinking, for us, Columbus, right? Because, I mean, we live in a country, the capital is Washington, D.C. What's C stand for? Columbia. There's a Columbus, Ohio. We have Columbus Day right now. We'll see if we have that for much longer. It's controversial. We'll get into that. But Da Gama is going to have a large impact on kind of a global economy, just like we have today. And we see that kind of with what's going on now, right? This pandemic we're dealing with starts in China. They have the manufacturing. But if places don't get into manufacturing, then they can't really do their job either. So that's going to have like a domino effect. All right, so Vasco da Gama, we see a map here. So you can kind of tell, if you never heard of Portugal before, it's right here. And he sails to the southern tip of Africa and back up to Calcutta today, comes back around to Portugal. Now, this isn't exactly how it goes. You have to kind of hit ports as you're going along. So it's a little bit more accurate over here. You can't just show up to a port, though, because people are like, what are you doing here? Well, what do you got for us? Are you friendly? Are you a foe? You have to have trading agreements. You have to establish yourself at these trading ports, and that took time. So 1498 is when he succeeded this whole entire voyage, but it took longer than that to actually plot this whole course out. So when I say that he inspired Columbus, you might think, well, Columbus sailed to America in 1492. That's before. Da Gama was already trying to figure this whole route out, and people before him were on the same kind of track. So he's going to make money. That inspires people. We all want to make money. Well, not me, because I'm a teacher, but most people are okay with making money. They want to. And they're probably inspired by someone else who has done that. Maybe not just because they made money, but that's probably a part of it. Same kind of thing happens here. And hopefully you want to do better than your inspiration. You want to say, hey, I respect you, but I really want to do better, make more money, do a better job than you're doing. Not that they're doing a bad job, but you always, I hope, want to improve on the past. All right, on to Columbus. Now, Columbus is a guy who is, like I said, controversial, right? Hitler isn't controversial, really, because most people, yeah, he's bad. Controversial means, well, there's a lot of things we could say about it, right? So this isn't what he looked like, but this is a famous illusion here. I guess it's an illusion. Where you look at it and you probably see right away, I don't know, depending on who you are, you see this young woman, right? There's her nose and she's looking away, her chin. And she's, I don't know, they say beautiful, who can tell? She's not really looking at you, so whatever. Because Columbus could be seen as a positive person. Would we be here the way we are now without Columbus? Well, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe things would be better, maybe things would be worse, but they definitely could be worse, I would think. So everything that we have now, things that we enjoy in this country, would they have been possible without Columbus? I'm sure we would have found America, or someone would have discovered America eventually, but would it have been the same? It's hard to tell. But Columbus definitely does get a lot of respect, at least in our past culture. I think that's starting to change now. Now, if you look at the other part of this, you have a old witch lady. Here's her big nose. Apparently people with big noses are ugly, which isn't great for me. Here's her chin, here's her mouth, her eye, like if she had glasses. Right. So I use this illusion because it's kind of the same thing as Columbus, right? He could be ugly, he could be beautiful. It really depends on your outlook on things. Why would he be ugly? Well, he set a precedent for how the Europeans are going to treat the Native Americans. Precedents. Prefix pre-before. So how are you going to deal with it? The precedent is something that you set that other people will follow. It's like an example that they follow. If you have younger brothers and sisters and you're a good kid, then they will probably follow you. If you're not a good kid, then odds are they won't be really great either. And your parents, kind of the same thing. They set a precedent for you. So Columbus here is going to set a precedent when he gets to the New World. The natives are kind of a means to an end. They had gold. I'm going to try to get their gold from them. And that's really, and I'm going to convert them to Christianity, and eventually the Spanish are going to enslave them. So they weren't treated like people right off the bat, and that's going to continue to happen. And really, kind of, you could even argue, still happening today. So what did he actually do? Well, he sailed from Spain, and he went west instead of east. So remember, Da Gama sails here, and it's pretty known that explorers are trying to find the route here to India and the East Indies, because that's where a lot of goods are, spices are. Of course, China's here. They're a huge economic power. You could, again, go by land, but that's not the best way to go. The best way to go is by sea, if you can do it. Columbus is like, yeah, that's a mess. I'm just going to go this way, and I'll show you a map coming up here that will hopefully make more sense to you. So he lands in the Caribbean in 1492. You probably know the rhyme. More specifically, in one of the atolls in the Bahamas, his description was flat with trees and a lake. Thanks. That's super helpful, Columbus. So we don't actually know where he landed. He named it Hispaniola, but who knows? But that's kind of the idea. That's what most people think is where he landed, is in the Bahamas somewhere. So here's a map of what Columbus believed. Now, he did believe the world was round. Everybody that's not people, the people who thought the world was flat back then are kind of people who thought the world was flat today, as they're not educated. So most people who knew anything really knew the world was round. So there's that. This is the map, though, that Columbus would have believed in. Hopefully you notice something missing in this map. So Columbus believed you could sail, just go there, because Da Gama sails around here and goes around. Columbus said, no, we'll just go this way. And he would have been totally right, by the way, if not for, the Americas that are here that we live in. So he was really on the right track. He was at the right line of latitude, longitude. Everything was really good. Well, not longitude, the right where he thought it was right. But so he was a good navigator. You can hate him or love him, but he was very good at navigating other things he wasn't really so great at. So he wasn't the first to discover America, not even the first European, but he began European colonization. That's what he did. That's important. And I'll have the definition for colonization later, but just so you know now, it's basically one country takes over another area outside that country, and people settle there. Settlers from that home country live there. So, for example, if we decide to colonize the moon, we've already been there, we'd be in the US, we could start having people move there and live there. And we would have the laws on the moon would reflect our laws. Drinking age would still be under 21. Would marijuana be legal there? I don't know. That's not up to me because that's not a common law, but you would have to pay taxes to the US government. You couldn't kill people. Things like that. It would be the same laws, it would be a different area, and that's kind of what's going to happen here. Europeans are going to spread their power and their influence and their culture to the Americas because of Columbus. So Columbus gets to the Bahamas, he sees the people, he's like, hey, Indians, and they're like, what? We're not Indians, but we call them still Indians today, like I said before. But he does see that the people that he meets are wearing gold. He said, hey, where's the gold? And they didn't have too much gold. They had some. But Columbus wanted more and more and more and more, to the point where he forced the natives there, they're called the Taino people, to bring him a certain amount of gold every day. They had a quota. And if they didn't meet the quota, he cut their hands off, which A, sucks, B, makes it harder for you to find the gold that you're supposed to find, and C, more importantly for them, makes it really hard to farm. If you don't farm, you don't eat. If you don't eat, yeah. So that's kind of how he was able to pretty much wipe out those people. And it was so bad that the Spanish actually put him in jail because he was pretty bad. But before that happened, he came back and he brought all kinds of things, right? He brought food, animals, plants that people in Spain had never seen before. He also brought back some natives who, of course, died from disease. I don't know if you knew that, but it's not really a good look to just kidnap people, which is basically what he did, and put them in cages, and people came to look at them like they were animals. But if you're Spanish, that's kind of interesting, right? Wouldn't you come, if someone went to a different planet, brought back aliens and alien plants and alien animals, wouldn't you want to go see them? So he called them, he thought he was in the Indies, and he kind of was like, well, I'm at the West Indies, so I'm right. And he, I guess, technically, when they called him the West Indies, he was right, but he wasn't in the East Indies where he thought he was. Now, when Columbus was allowed to go back, after he served his prison sentence for being a lunatic, he was looking for the passage between from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, because they would believe they landed in Panama, and they went inland. They said, hey, there's another ocean. Let's go there with our ship, but we can't because it's through land, and they were not able to find the passage where eventually we know that Magellan did find that. All right, our third explorer, Hernan Cortez, nicknamed Cortez the Killer. There's a really good Neil Young song, but you don't know who he is. All right, so Cortez is going to be sent by the Spanish to go to Mexico to basically get as much gold as they could. Because we are in a time when, and we'll hit this term later, but when governments follow the economic policy of mercantilism. And the goal there is to get as much gold and silver as you can. I forgot to say mercantilism. Beautiful. So Cortez wants to basically defeat the Aztecs so he can take anything he wants from them. They're way easier if they're out of power. But he's got a problem. He doesn't have that many people, and they have a whole entire country. Imagine if aliens came down, they had like 50 alien guys, and they have alien ships, but if they're trying to take out the US, we have lots of people compared to that. And we have, hopefully if you've ever seen alien movies, usually our technology is, we find a way, right? So Cortez knows that straight up fighting it's not really going to probably work out very well. The Aztecs' weapons are, they literally have a rock tied to a stick. It's a rock called obsidian. And when you break it, does have pretty sharp edges, so you don't want to get hit with one of those. But it's still a rock tied to a stick. And the Spanish have guns. It takes a long time for them to shoot, but they have guns. They have bow and arrows. They have horses, which, by the way, Aztec have never seen a horse. And they've never seen a guy on top of a horse. And they've never seen a guy on top of a horse with armor. And they never saw a guy on top of a horse with armor shooting a gun. So imagine how horrifying that would be. It'd be like if an alien rode a T-Rex and was shooting like a laser beam at you. Pretty intimidating, but still, he needed some help. So one thing he did is he made alliances with other tribes because, like I said in the last video, the Aztec were a powerful empire and they ruled over smaller civilizations, and those people didn't really like the Aztec a whole lot. So Cortez said, look at us. We have all this technology, we're powerful, join our side, and we'll be able to take out your longtime rivals. That's a tough proposal to ignore. Another reason Cortez was able to defeat the Aztec is diseases, mainly smallpox. A lot of diseases that the Europeans had that the natives did not have an immunity to. And like I said in the last notes, we talked about technology, right? Where Europeans had good technology because they basically were going to work together in a group with people from Africa and Asia and the Middle East. So they were able to develop their technology because they had helped they could innovate from other cultures' technologies. Very similar is with contagion, where they would build immunity from contact with people from other areas in the world. Native Americans didn't have that immunity because they didn't contact other people in the world. So all these diseases are spreading through, and of course they have no idea how to combat the diseases, and everything just devolves into anarchy. Right now, 2020, March, we kind of see a little kind of window into how rough that would be. We have plenty of things. We have ways to communicate. We can talk to each other digitally. We know that it's important to stay away from each other. Imagine if you didn't understand how contagion worked, though. You wouldn't really know. People would turn to the gods, just kind of like the bubonic plague, very similar to that, but this time it's happening in the Americas. So with better technology, with alliances with other native people and diseases, it wasn't all that tough for Cortez to defeat the Aztec. Take their gold, build over their capital city, make it into Mexico City, where it is today. Okay, his men are called conquistadors or conquerors. It's a picture of a crossbow there, something they would use to fight the Aztec with. I think, for me, trying to put myself in the shoes, sandals of the Aztec warriors, I mean, you have this proud history of always winning and dominating, and then these dudes show up in armor on horses. That'd be scary. Horses are kind of scary already, let alone you've never seen them before, and they're manned by someone trying to come kill you. Yeah. All right, next is we're going to kind of go over how some countries dealt with colonization. So what is colonization? Well, setting up, first of all, trading posts was part of it. Kind of like we talked about with Da Gama setting up trading posts in Africa. There are some cities strategically located where you needed to go in and get food and provisions for your men. I mean, these journeys would take months, and food doesn't really last for a month, so they didn't have like spam or anything like that. You'd have to continually go to port to get food and supplies and things like that. But you need those ports to be friendly to you, and if they belong to you, they would be friendly to you, or they belong to your country. So lots of times if they did not want to be friendly, you would just take them over or kill them or do what you need to do, strong arm, to make them okay with you, or at least just take over and make your own colony, which is what happened. A lot of colonies, we think of a colony, maybe think of like the 13 colonies, and they kind of started out as trading posts. Like Jamestown was basically a trading post. As we expanded, we didn't really need them as much anymore. But lots of colonies still trade with the Native Americans. So America is going to be known as the New World because it is kind of like a new world. There's animals people have never seen before, plants people have never seen before, different kinds of people that people have never seen before. It's kind of like a whole new planet. So we'll go through how each European country handled this. Portugal really mostly dealt with the Indies and Africa because Da Gama sailed for Portugal and he established that trade route for Portugal. And so that's where Portugal is really going to kind of be dealing with. And like I said before, more generally, European countries, if they needed a trading port, they would just take it over with their military force and their advanced technology, and that's kind of what Portugal did too. They did, however, get some territory in the Americas, in Brazil. Now, we talked about the Spanish taking over Mexico. Guess what language they speak in Mexico today? Spanish. Guess what language they speak in Brazil? Portuguese. Guess what language I'm speaking here in America? English. You can kind of see the relation there. I know it's obvious, but maybe we didn't make that connection. And the reason that Portugal gets Brazil and not other countries or not other areas is because of the Treaty of Tordesillas, which we will hit on later, so I don't want to go over that too much today. All right. Again, we're watching our second and last video here about Spanish colonization, and that was really of all the European countries who colonized the Americas, it was really the most widespread and most impactful. So pause this video, look in the video description for the link to video 2, and then start it back up when you're done. All right, welcome back. I have some review questions for you. How did the Spanish defeat the Aztec and the Inca? Well, we talked about this already, really. Diseases, better weapons, alliances with other groups, mainly. How did Spain gain their wealth? Gold and silver. Lots of gold and silver was found in the Americas. They forced natives to go and mine that, and that was really deadly for the natives. Died from disease and just complications to mining. It's a super dangerous profession, but for the Spanish, yay. And that, again, kind of begs the question from the first video, is it worth it? All right, do the ends justify the means? And we'll see. The short answer is nope, but hopefully you figure that out by the end of these notes. Because Spain loses its power, and mainly from inflation. And that's kind of something we're dealing with right now. We maybe heard about the stimulus package the government's going to give, not everyone, but some people, some money to help relieve with the economic pressure going on right now. And one of the fears is inflation. If everybody gets more money, then everything's just going to cost more, and prices are going to go up, and money is actually going to be less valuable. And the problem with that is if you're making the same money, then you're actually making less money. Right, so an example of why inflation is bad. Let's say you make $20 a day, and toilet paper rolls, because those are important for some reason, costs $1. No problem. But with inflation, prices go up. So let's say after some time goes by, toilet paper rolls cost $5. But if you're still making $20, well, you're making less, because if a loaf of bread costs $2, well, now it costs $8. Well, look at your grocery bill. If all you need is toilet paper and bread, that's impressive. Your grocery bill is going up, but your income is staying the same. So people actually were kind of making less compared to everything else. So that's why inflation is not a good thing. Also, Spain spent their money on wars. They built a giant armada to go fight England, and a storm came up, and the whole armada sunk. They never even fought. So if that was a movie, it'd be a super lame movie. But that happened, so that was pretty devastating for them. And they also split their empire. Philip ruled over Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, and he split those, basically Spain and the Holy Roman Empire up between his two sons. So that's going to weaken Spain. So all this terrible things, the terrible things that they did to the Spanish, and we'll see more of them as we get on. It wasn't even really worth it. As usual, like I say, these negative things that people do or like countries do usually come back to bite them in the end. And the Aztec are kind of one of those. They had lots of power. They didn't treat their rivals very well, and they were defeated by Cortez, Inca. Not as brutal as the Aztec, but they also had a very large empire where they controlled other countries. They were defeated by Pizarro. And this is an opinion question. I'm not going to answer this, but if you were Spanish, would you be proud of this part of your history, or would you be ashamed of it? It's kind of tough. Like if you think about it, we can talk about after World War II in American history. Okay, well, we fought, not fought directly, but, well, in some cases we did fight communists directly. We had a really good economy. I think when people say make America great again, they're thinking at that time, 50s, 60s, lots of employment. It was really easy to buy your own house and have a family and live the American dream. But there is still discrimination and segregation. We were fighting wars and supporting dictators to fight communism and hurting other people in other countries. So it's a dual legacy, right? Same thing here with the Spanish. You have, a lot of achievements from these people, exploring, finding, mapping out the Americas, spreading your faith, your religion, spreading any technological innovations you have or medical innovations. But at the same time, you're enslaving the natives, killing the natives, they're dying from disease, and it's not like you're trying to prevent that from happening. So, again, it's just like history, like anything else. You can see some good things that come out of it, you can see some bad things that come out of it, and hopefully it helps us make decisions moving forward. So, for the notes, Spain controls most of modern-day Mexico, and really most of North America, including today, like Texas, California, even part of the Great Plains was claimed by Spain. And of course, South America, except for Brazil. Remember, that was Portugal's. Spanish missionaries are going to force them to convert. Hey, we have a message for you about Jesus. He was really nice. He loved everybody. And if you don't accept him, we're going to kill you. It's not very Christian, but that's kind of how Europeans rolled at this time. Here's a lovely picture for you. The Spanish came here, and we know that they wanted gold, they wanted silver, and natives needed to mine that. But also, they had crops that Europeans started to really enjoy. Sugarcane could be planted and grown in the Caribbean. You could get sugar from India, but it's expensive because it's all the way from India. But if it was in a Spanish colony, you can make a lot of that, make a lot of money, and everybody likes sugar. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but all kinds of other crops that were native to the Americas can be grown in Spain. They even tried to grow some silk in the Spanish colonies, not Spain, sorry, Spanish colonies. So they thought they needed labor. And they could move Spanish people across, but then you had to pay them, and that's a pain. And not everyone in Spain wanted to go to the Americas. So, natives, they live here, and they're not like us, so we'll just make them do it. The problem, though, is if you convert them to Christianity, you're not supposed to enslave them unless you just say you can, which is what they did with the encomienda system. So basically, Christian natives now, because they were forced to be Christian, can still be slaves because they're not European. Basically, it's a race thing at this point. First, it was like, well, they're not Christian. We can do whatever we want to them. Well, now they're Christian. Well, they're not white, so we'll just make them be our slaves. Because they want to help us, because they're Christian now, right? No. And the last country we'll talk about, of course, Britain. So they're going to establish 13 colonies. Hopefully you have heard of this before. Some of these colonies were made by the government, like Jamestown, for example, I mentioned that before. That was a government contract that they used, or charter, to kind of make more money for the empire. They could grow tobacco and corn and that kind of stuff, cash crops, right? Cotton, indigo. So some of these colonies are basically like companies would set them up. Imagine the moon, and there's like an Amazon part of the moon where I don't know why Amazon would want part of the moon, because that doesn't really make any sense. But you hopefully get the idea where the U.S. government would say, all right, companies, if you want to claim parts of the moon, that's fine, pay your taxes. But if that can boost our economy, we're all for it. Also, if you're a weirdo, in this case, like Puritans and people like that who were seen as weirdos, not that they were, but to the British, they're a different religion. They're not the Anglican that you're supposed to be. So you need to get out of here. So they did. So they went to Pennsylvania and New York and even New Jersey. It was that bad that they wanted to leave so they could have religious freedom, that kind of thing. So if you're, I don't know, someone I don't know, I can't make fun of anybody specifically on the internet, but if I was in class, it would be different. But yeah, you get the idea. People who maybe would just want to be by themselves and they just want to sit in their house and don't want to be bothered by their neighbors, they could move to the moon too if they wanted to, as long as they pay taxes, and that helped the government too. Kind of the same kind of thing as what Britain did here. And we know hopefully what's going to happen with that eventually. So we're going to have some review questions to wrap things up here. What were the motivations for exploration? 3 Gs. God, gold, and glory. Da Gama, he was Portuguese. He sailed to India, past the Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa. Christopher Columbus, what did he do? Not discovered America. He sailed to the Americas and established European colony. So the violent precedents, talked about that word before, and how natives would be treated by Europeans. And that way was badly. Aztecs were conquered by Cortez the Killer. How did he do that? Alliances, advanced weapons, and diseases. Colonization. What's that? Establishing an area that is controlled by the mother country. Remember, settlers from those areas would go and live there. What was the encomienda system that I spelled wrong on here? This way for Europeans, I guess really Spanish or Spaniards. Sorry, everyone else in Europe, to legally enslave Native Americans. And then we'll hit the Tree of Tordesillas later. So this is the end of the second video. We got one more video. We hit up the Columbian Exchange and some more effects of the Age of Exploration.